Running a personal training business is about more than training clients. At Soul's EOFY Explained workshop for personal trainers, industry experts and accountants shared practical advice on managing your finances, growing your income, and building a stronger PT business. Here are the highlights.
Lewis, I wanted to open up, and I think I've got a question. We've spoken about admin, we've spoken about, making sure that you can get your systems in place to kind of, set yourself up for success, if I can call it that. What do you reckon the biggest pitfalls are, or things that, PTs underestimate when they, come into the industry kind of, if you were, new to this industry in the last 6 months, like what advice would you give yourself?
It's a good question, and one that you want to know the answer to early on in your career. Appointment scheduling and session tracking is the easy part of PT. That's the easy admin part of PT. But I think PTs underestimate how much time is needed to be spent on things like client retention systems, financial management, record keeping, compliance. Just simple stuff like having your progress check-ins, set dates for goal reviews, send those re-engagement messages. The financial management stuff, probably properly tracking your profit numbers, not mixing those personal expenses with your business expenses, like Julie was mentioning. Underpricing your services, so knowing your worth, that cash flow forecasting. There's plenty in there. I probably couldn't pinpoint one, even just simple record keeping and compliance, knowing when your insurance is due to renew, your registration, CPR, first aid, incident reports. If you can get those things managed from the beginning, then it's going to make your experience in the industry in this first 12 to 24 months a lot more pleasurable.
Michael, I think you've done quite a lot of work with helping businesses like that scale, and how do you actually, I think better now than ever, right? Like I think end of financially is a really great reset period where you can kind of look at your business, look at your pricing like Lewis is saying, but also probably look at what how you're going about making money essentially. Have you got any thoughts on that?
How do you scale your business? Because one of the challenges that small businesses have is there's only so many hours in the day, right? 24 hours in the day. How do you use those effectively? And so for personal trainers, typically they will sell their time, they're trading time for money. So then we've got to look at that and say, okay, well, why don't we productize your business? We can use your skills, then create products, whether those be in-person products or, boot camps, whatever. We make digital products out of those, online coaching courses, these sorts of things.
I guess my question is how do you make sure you get your pricing right and your hours right so you don't burn out essentially, but you can start earning a bit of money and potentially then be able to diversify and spend some time in those other channels?
I think you've got to look at what the industry is charging and then sort of see where you fit there. But what we typically do when we productize people's businesses, we like to have different tiers of products. And then that also opens up your audience much more. It also depends on where you're coming, or as people are coming into your marketing funnel. Typically, you might have a bunch of free content out there. That free content drives the awareness, builds a lot of trust, and then you push them through the funnel to your cheaper tier products. That also then builds more trust, and then as you build that relationship, you've then got higher tier products, which are really what you're sort of aiming to get people through to. So an example of this is, maybe you've got like a nutrition guide that you sell online, and then you've got like an online course. Let's call your nutrition guide $50 to buy, and then $250 for your online training course, 12-week course or whatever it is. And then you might have an in-person boot camp, which might be a couple of grand, something like that.
And Lewis, I might throw to you on this one is, what's the sentiment, I guess, in the industry from your perspective around the budget that got released? There's big things being thrown around like the asset write-off. I don't even know what all of these things mean. And, I have been an accountant for a while. Like, what do you see, I guess? What's the sentiment from the industry?
I sense a lot of confusion. It's difficult to get the right answers from the right people. So I think it's an opportunity for us or anyone that is part of those decisions or even just those experts to be able to give some clear advice on what to look for, on what to do. So it kind of opens it up for us to be able to be ahead of it and start talking to them in real terms and make it and simplify it for them.
Just on that note, I wanted to ask a question to Michael. If you were a young PT who wants to grow and let's just assume does not have an internet presence for whatever reason, where would you start? Which platform would you focus on? Would you build a website? Would you just use TikTok or Instagram? What would your top 3 tips be for someone starting out in the business?
I'm always somebody that thinks, do it once, do it right. So I'd build my digital infrastructure. So that's, basic website with a good sort of SEO foundation. I would, these days as well, like 2026, I'd be looking to try to get recommended by, ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or any of these sort of, AI agents when people... There's a ton of searches happening through AI these days for, health recommendations or, personal training advice or can you write me a program? And so I'd structure my content on my website around that, the answer engine optimization, generative engine optimization. I'd do that. I'd get that foundation right. If you can do that, I think that sets you up really nicely and you own that platform, right? You own the website. Nobody can take that away from you.